Hey YouTube, welcome back to Tinker Tools. Over the last few months, Dewalt has released two brand new impact drivers. So it's that time again to try and answer which Dewalt impact driver is right for you. So let's go ahead and get into that on Tinker with Tools. Now, as I mentioned, over the last few months, we have received two brand new impact drivers. First, in the summer, we got the Dewalt DCF860, their new 3-speed high-torque impact driver that goes toe-to-toe with some of the best impact drivers on the market in terms of raw power and speed. Then in the last month or so, we did get the quiet hydraulic impact driver, which is the first time a new one of these has been released on the market in just about 8 years. And so it was kind of nice to see Dewalt going after some product categories, in my opinion, where they had been lacking over the last few years. But with both of these releases, I received plenty of questions about which impact driver was right to purchase and if it was worth upgrading from this impact driver or that impact driver. So today, I want to go ahead and cover the 5 Dewalt impact drivers that I think are worth considering for your purchase at this present time, and go through each one of them and then do some testing so you can see what the difference is between these and actual raw performance testing. I've got other videos on the channel where I do kind of go over a lot of the older impact drivers, so I'm not going to be doing that today. So let's go ahead and talk about each of the impact drivers. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to be talking about the most basic Dewalt impact driver that I'm going to talk about today, the Dewalt DCF840. And this is just simply their brushless, cordless impact driver, most commonly sold at Lowe's here in the United States, but you can also get it through online retailers as well. I'll be sure to have links for each of these down below. Now, this is kind of the Dewalt sleeper impact, and that when it was announced, it kind of just slipped into stores without anybody noticing, replacing an older impact driver. And so far, the performance on this one, I think, outdoes what it's actually rated for on paper. And oftentimes, this is one of the more performant impact drivers that they have, and especially for the price that you typically pay for it. Now, for right now, you can get this for $99 in a kit, but you can also pick it up tool only. And obviously, when you're doing that, that is going to be one of the cheaper prices you're going to pay tonight. And normally, this would be my kind of value pick that I'd recommend to everyone, but there's a couple other tools that are on deeper discount during the holiday season, so that's something to consider as well. Now, for the most part, all of the other ones are going to be considered what I would say are premium impact drivers. Now, here in the US market, this one, the DCF850, gets branded as an atomic impact driver, but in other territories, it's actually sold as an XR, and that's kind of why I say it's a more premium impact driver. When it first was released, the specs on this matched their top impact driver blow for blow, but in a much smaller package. And to date, this is still going to be the most compact impact driver that they have in terms of overall head size. This one does get the 3-speed transmission, or gearbox if you will, and this one is going to have the Dewalt Speed 1, where you're actually going to pull the trigger, hold it down, it will go a little bit and stop, and then begin impacting at a very slow and predictable rate. In my opinion, you either love or hate this. It's not a feature I prefer, but I know that enough of you have commented over the years that this is something you love, and this is one of the few impact drivers here today that still has that feature on it. But even though it's not going to be, in my opinion, the most performant one that they have, it is still one that has a lot of fans out there and a lot of people love, and I think there's something about it that just works really well. Next up is going to be what was, in my opinion, intended to be their range-topping impact driver. At least that's kind of how they touted it, as a replacement for the older 887. This is the DCF845, and if you hold up the 840 and the 845, you're going to see a lot of similarities. This one, once again, retained the 3-speed gearbox and that familiar precision mode in Speed 1. This is going to be the other impact driver that has it, but it got kind of some of the speed improvements that we saw from the DCF840 and the higher impact rate over what we saw in the new Atomic. And so this one, in my opinion, up until earlier this year, was the best impact driver that they sold, even though it still didn't give me everything that I wanted out of a Dewalt impact driver. Right now, you can pick this up tool only for $99 or just over that at other online retailers, but this one is a really good value. And then, as we've already talked about earlier this year, we got the DCF860. This was finally the impact driver that I feel like is a true successor to the 887 and something that for Dewalt was long overdue. And they finally delivered something in a class where it was actually competitive with some of the top impact drivers in power and speed. I think this was Dewalt finally kind of recognizing what their potential was in the impact driver space. The release of the 860, in my opinion, makes something like the 845 make more sense if you don't always need the range-topping, high-torque impact driver. If we had just gotten that this year, I think we'd be plenty happy. But then earlier this year, we caught leaked images of a new quiet hydraulic impact driver, and sure enough, a month ago we got our hands on the DCF870. Now I've already done an introductory video and compared it to its hydraulic competition, but so many of you have been asking, does this replace my DCF850? Does this replace my older 787? And kind of asking where it fits in. Now, to be clear, this is not a traditional impact driver, nor is it going to have the performance characteristics of a traditional impact driver. It is not going to reach the same levels of torque, but I know that when people have tried it, they've actually found that the performance is actually pretty decent on it. So then what I want to answer today, in addition to kind of giving you some comparison of the different metrics here, is I want to go ahead and talk about where it fits into the lineup so you can understand is this going to be enough for what you need to do, that going after the quiet performance that it does deliver is going to be beneficial for you, or if you need to stick to one of these other traditional impact drivers. Specifically, I've had a lot of people ask if it's worth upgrading from their atomic to the new quiet hydraulic, and normally I would say they're not the same kind of tool, but I think as we see in the testing today, they are more similar than what I might have thought. 103.1, 102.5, 103.7, 845 coming out with the highest so far. 102.8. Max right at the end there. It gets a little louder when you stress it was 97.2. Prior to that last little bit, it was running at 93. All right, so if you've been following these Dewalt impact driver videos for a while and you've watched plenty on the new 860, I don't think it comes off as a surprise that the 860 is easily the most performant impact driver here, and it actually finished several seconds ahead of even its closest competition. It finished at 12.81 seconds compared to 1832 from the DCF845, 1998 from the 840, and then we go up to 2077 for the new quiet hydraulic impact driver, and then just over 21 seconds, so just a little bit longer, the DCF850. So aside from the 860, I think what you have is pretty consistent with other videos that we've seen, that I usually see the DCF845 finishing a little bit ahead of everything else. And for my experience, the 840 outperforms the 850. But then the quiet hydraulic impact driver, I really didn't know where this was going to finish. I knew, having used it, that the performance wasn't necessarily lacking, but I knew it wasn't going to compare to the much more powerful 860. And so that is definitely going to slot it kind of into its hierarchy right around where a lot of these impact drivers are. It's going to be a step below in performance from the 845, even a little bit below where I would consider the 840 to be, but it's definitely just a touch faster than the 850. So then I think one of the big questions that a lot of people were asking is it worth it to upgrade from that DCF 850 going up to something like the 870? Well, from a performance standpoint, no, you're not really receiving a performance benefit, but you are going to receive a smoother operation, in my opinion, especially on smaller fasteners, and then a quiet operation. When we talk about noise, that's where I want to make a couple important distinctions here. So pretty much all of the regular traditional impact drivers range between 102.5 and 103.7. So basically 1.2 decibels separated four of these impact drivers. The DCF870, on the other hand, up until that last maybe half inch of that 5-inch fastener, was trending right around 93 decibels. And then as it gets onto something that requires a little bit more torque, it almost increases the performance a little bit and it gets a little bit noisier. You do hear it when you use the tool. I don't know how well it's going to come across on camera, but it is something that's noticeable on that tool. And when that happened, it shot from 93 something, like 93.5, all the way up to 97.2. But it still is going to be considerably quieter than these others. It's not something, the noise level of these tools is not something that translates well on camera. But I will tell you that there is a difference. It is a quieter tool. So basically, don't just go off what you're hearing in the video to kind of judge how quiet that tool is. It is noticeable in person. It is a distinct type of noise that you're getting there. So then if I were recommending impact drivers to go and buy right now, I think it comes down to, if you're already on the Dewalt platform, I think for the money, the 845 is really hard to pass up, simply because it offers pretty decent performance at $99 bare tool, and it seems like several times throughout the year you can get it for that price. If you're not on the Dewalt's platform and you just kind of want to dip your toe, that's where the 840 kit kind of starts to make more sense, but it obviously isn't as feature rich as the other impact drivers. On all these, you're getting quick insert collet, you're getting 3 LED lights on the front of the older 3 impact drivers, and then on the newer ones, you do get the 3 sections of 3 LEDs for a much brighter overall light. Now, if you need top tier power and you're on Dewalt's platform, obviously the choice is simple. Go with the 860. So I don't think I can recommend the 870, the quiet hydraulic, for your average everyday person who's just looking for an impact driver. But if all you're doing is kind of lighter duty stuff and you're okay paying the more premium price of that tool, then it certainly is a nice impact driver. Just don't buy it expecting it to do every task that you would normally use an impact driver. So kind of factor in what you're doing and how you're using the tool into that decision. So there you have it. If you have any questions about any of these, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. If there's something you want to see tested in the future, I do take consideration of feedback from the viewers as to what we're going to be showing. In fact, this video is heavily influenced by a couple of different people that really wanted to see the 850 and how it compares to the 870. So that's what we're doing here. We're trying to get your questions answered. If you like this sort of video, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We're going to have lots of good content in the coming month or so. So stay tuned. We got a lot coming up. But until next time, I will catch you on Tinker with Tools.